السنة مثل سفينة نوح، من ركبها نجا ومن تركها غرق.
الحمد لله الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. As to what proceeds, after praising Allah the Most High, separated from His creation in a manner which befits His Majesty, with love and veneration exclusively for Him, and then requesting He the Most High to send His Salah and Salam upon our final Prophet and Messenger, Khatamul Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen, Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Qurashi alayhi salatu wassalam. We meet once again for our weekly meeting to study the legacy of al-Imām al-Bukhārī raḥimahullāh ta'ala, Sīrat Imām al-Bukhārī, which was written by the great scholar, the ʿAllāmah, the muhaddith and faqih, al-Salām, Mubārakpūrī, rahmatullah alayh. In the previous section, we discussed, or we read through, or we studied the praise of the shuyukh or the teachers of Imām al-Bukhārī for him. And this is a benchmark, standardized procedure that for anybody to be considered to be from the people of knowledge, then the people of knowledge or the teachers of that person, the shuyukh of that person must, or they may have made recommendations for that particular person. So you will always find those who are from the students of knowledge or those who are from the ʿAllāmah that their teachers praised them, vouched for them, testified to their knowledge. Today's section is an important section. Shaykh al-Salām Mubārakpūrī raḥimahullah gave it the title Imām al-Bukhārī in the eyes of his equals and contemporaries. The Shaykh al-Salām Mubārakpūrī raḥimahullah, he said, being contemporaries is a cause for discord, is a well-known problem. It is incredibly difficult for one to escape from the competition of his contemporaries. As such, it is very rare that the people of expertise and great status who are present in one time recognize each other's virtue as they should, except to whom Allah has mercy upon. When we search the fine details of the lives of any two men who were experts in a certain field and people of great status and whom the qadr gathered, or whom the qadr of Allah gathered in one time, we find that both pretend not to know of and envy one another, to the extent that it sometimes reaches the extent of disputation and shunning of one another. Thus, I see it appropriate here to mention the statements and opinions of Imām al-Bukhārí's associates and contemporaries who are among those recognized as people of great status and virtue. Furthermore, they, despite being contemporaries of his, were not simply amazed by the gifts which Imām al-Bukhārī possessed, but rather they admitted his high rank and mastery in words which point towards the station which Allah had raised him to in fiqh, powerful memory, and boundless knowledge, despite the fact we are sufficed from all these external testimonies, so long as al-Jami' al-Sahih is before us. انتهى كلامه رحمه الله تعالى. Shaykh al-Salām Mubārakpūrī rahmatullah alayh begins this section by mentioning the well-known meaning. Al-Muʿāṣaratu sababun lil-munāfara. Being contemporaries is a cause for discord. This means that when two people live in the same time, work in the same field, have similar teachers, similar students, similar audiences, and similar status, rivalry can easily appear between them. A person may find it easy to praise scholars who came before him. He may also find it easy to praise someone who is far away from him. When another person is beside him, sharing the same field, and perhaps surpassing him, the soul is tested. So the real test is not merely whether a person can praise the great scholars of the past. The real test is whether he can acknowledge the virtue of someone living in his own time, especially if that person is from the same field as him. This requires sincerity, ikhlas, justice, adl, humility, tawadhu, and protection from envy. Secondly, this principle is not an attack on the scholars. The author is not saying that every contemporary relationship is corrupt, nor is he saying that every scholar who criticized another scholar did so out of jealousy. Rather, Shaykh al-Salām Mubārakpūrī is explaining a general reality about human nature. When two people are close in age, rank, field, or public recognition, the soul may become affected by competition. One person may struggle to acknowledge the virtue of the other. He may minimize his rank, overlook his excellence, or interpret his actions harshly. Sometimes this hidden rivalry grows until it becomes open disputation, harsh criticism, avoidance, or shunning. This is why the speech of contemporaries about one another must be handled with caution, especially when there is known rivalry, tension, competition, or disagreement between them. Thirdly, the author from Ibn Ḥabbās radiyallahu anhuma explains this meaning. It is reported from Ibn Ḥabbās radiyallahu anhuma that he said, خذوا العلم حيث وجدتم ولا تقبلوا قول الفقهاء بعدهم في بعد فإنهم يتغايرون تغاير التيوس في الزريبة. Take knowledge wherever you find it, and do not accept the statements of the jurists against one another, for they become jealous of one another as goats become jealous in the pen. This statement of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma has been cited by Ibn Abdul in Jami'u Bayan al-Ilmi wa Fadili under the bab or the section known as Babu Hukmi Qawl al-Ulama'i Ba'dihim fi Ba'd, the section concerning the ruling of the statements of scholars about one another. The wording is powerful. The word atiyus refers to male goats, and az-zariba refers to the animal pen or enclosure where the herds are. The image is that male goats gathered in one enclosure may compete fiercely with one another, especially when competing for dominance. Each one wants superiority. Each one wants to push the other away. The issue is not merely that they are in the same place. The issue is that they are competing within the same space. Likewise, people who share the same field, era, students, audience, or public status may be tested by rivalry. One may feel threatened by the other's recognition, influence, students, or acceptance among the people. If sincerity and justice are weak, this can lead to envy, harshness, belittlement, and unfair criticism. However, this report must be understood correctly. This author must be understood correctly. It does not mean that every criticism between scholars is rejected. It does not mean that refutations are unnecessary. It does not mean that errors should be ignored. Rather, it means that when peers speak against one another, especially when rivalry or tension is present, their speech must be weighed carefully and not accepted blindly. Fourthly, there are two extremes in this issue. This topic is important because many students fall into one of two extremes. The first extreme is the extreme of people who become involved in the disputes of contemporaries. They take the speech of one peer against another, spread it, weaponize it, and build loyalty and disavowal upon it. They may read a harsh statement from one scholar, student, caller, translator, or organization against another, and immediately treat it as decisive proof. They do not ask whether there was rivalry, anger, misunderstanding, competition, or personal tension. They do not gather the full picture. They do not return the matter to qualified scholars. They simply enter the dispute, spread it, and make it part of their own identity. This is dangerous. The second extreme is the opposite. Some people misuse this principle and say this is only speech between contemporaries, so we reject all of it. They use the principle كلام الأقران يطوى ولا يروى as an excuse to dismiss every criticism, every refutation, every warning, and every clarification. This is also wrong. The balanced position is between the two extremes. We do not accept every criticism blindly, especially when it is between peers and there are signs of rivalry. But we also do not reject every criticism simply because the critique and the criticized lived in the same time. The truth, or the haqq, is weighed with evidence, justice, context, and the judgment of qualified scholars. Fifthly, the principle regarding the speech of contemporaries. Scholars mentioned the principle كلام الأقران يطوى ولا يروى. The speech of contemporaries against one another is folded away and not narrated. This does not mean that the truth is folded away. It does not mean that falsehood is left uncorrected. It does not mean that heretics, mubtadi'ah, are not warned against. It does not mean that mistakes, akhta, are ignored. Rather, it means that when speech between contemporaries is clearly affected by rivalry, anger, competition, partisanship, or personal tension, it should not be spread among the people as fuel for hatred and sectarianism. The student of knowledge should not be quick to circulate every harsh statement he finds. He should not detach quotes from their context. He should not turn old scholarly tensions into new social media battles. Instead, he should ask, was the criticism based on clear evidence? Did other reliable scholars agree? Was the critique known to have rivalry with the one criticized? Was the issue a real matter of deen, or was it affected by personal tension? Was the statement proportionate? Was it made in anger? It is something that benefits the people if spread, or is there something that should be left and not narrated? This is the balanced story. Sixthly, we need criticism and refutation, but with justice. Islam does not call to silence in the face of error. People are human. They make mistakes. Scholars make mistakes. Students of knowledge make mistakes. Callers make mistakes. Organizations make mistakes. Translators make mistakes. Writers make mistakes. Some mistakes are private and should be corrected privately. Some mistakes are public and require public clarification. Sometimes a person's error harms others and must be refuted. Sometimes a person spreads falsehood, desires, or heresy, bid'ah, and the people must be warned. Therefore, criticism and refutation are needed. The discipline of al-jarh wa ta'deel, disparagement and accreditation, is from the noble disciplines of Islam. Through it, Allah preserved the Sunnah from liars, weak narrators, confused narrators, heretics, mu'tadiyah, and people of desires. The scholars did not say, do not criticize anyone. Rather, they criticized with knowledge, evidence, justice, and fear of Allah. So the issue is not whether refutations exist. The issue is who is refuting, why is he refuting, how is he refuting, and is the refutation based upon knowledge, justice, and sincere rectification. A refutation may be necessary and praiseworthy. A refutation may also be sinful and corrupt if it is driven by ego, rivalry, exaggeration, injustice, or a desire to humiliate. So the student of knowledge must learn the difference. Seventhly, refutation is not for everyone. Another important principle must be added here, which is that refutation is not for everyone. Refutations are for scholars and strong students of knowledge who have firm grounding in the principles of the deen. The principles of refutation, the Arabic language, the books of Aqeedah, speech of the scholars, and objectives of correction and the limits of warning. Even among the scholars, not every scholar refutes. Some scholars are occupied with teaching. Some are occupied with issuing verdicts. Some are occupied with authoring. Some are occupied with the knowledge of hadith. Some are occupied with the Quran. Some may see the error but not see themselves as the best person to respond. Some may leave the matter to the one who is more specialized, more knowledgeable about the issue, or more capable of dealing with the harm. So if this is the case among scholars, then what about young people on social media? Today, some young boys who cannot read Arabic properly, or barely understand basic Arabic, or have not studied the foundation books of Aqeedah, yet they speak about the greatest scholars of the age as though they are judges over them. Some have not studied the books of the Salaf, have not sat properly with scholars, have not understood the chapters of Iman, Kufr, etc. Names and rulings, or the principles of al-Sunnah. Yet they spread claims such as Muhammad Nasiruddin Albani, Shaykh Muhammad Nasiruddin Albani was a murji, for example. I had a friend of mine who called me yesterday, and I think we must have spoken after 10 years, over 10 years. So we spoke after 10 years. And he was telling me about an individual that I had given da'wah to 30 years ago. And he said to me that he knew this individual, and I knew this individual. I was the one who called this individual to Da'wah Salafi. So anyway, this friend of mine, he met this individual recently. And he said when I met him, this individual was making takfir of the rulers. And then he came to Shaykh Albani. He said, yeah, Shaykh Albani, we can take from him in hadith only, but Shaykh Albani fell into irja. He was a murji'a in his aqeedah. So my friend, he started laughing. He said to him, Ya akhi, taqillah. How can you say this about Shaykh Muhammad Nasiruddin al-Albani? And this guy, this individual who I know very well, has not in his 30 years studied the first 5 pages of Medina Arabic book 1. Yet he is passing judgment. In fact, if you were to ask him the arkan and the wajibat of salah, I am pretty sure that he would not be able to answer them. But he can tell you whether Albani is murji or not murji. So I wasn't surprised when my friend told me this. He said, I had met this individual for something else, meaning that the reason why we have met was nothing to do with the deen, it was something to do with the dunya. So when we met, he then started speaking by firstly declaring some of the rulers to be disbelievers. And I said to him, meaning my friend said, that I said to him that, yeah, why are you preceding the ulama in making takfir? Wait for the people of knowledge to speak. He said, we don't need to wait for them. It's clear for us. He said, let the people of knowledge speak. Let them issue the word. He said, no, we don't have to wait for them. And the friend of mine, and this was yesterday night, by the way, we spoke yesterday night. And my friend said to me, he said, I've seen a pattern grow among the people. It grows like a cancer that grows among such people, that when these people disconnect themselves from the people of knowledge, when they start belittling the people of knowledge, when they think that the people of knowledge are misguided and they are guided, Allah truly misguides them. This is the uquba in jins al-amal. Allah misguides such people in this manner. And the jahl is murakkab, a compound type of ignorance, which is a type of ignorance when the person thinks that he is knowledgeable when he is not. And this was yesterday night when he told me about this person, and I haven't seen this person in the same sort of timeline with regards to this same friend of mine. And this is what the friend of mine said to me. He said, I keep my and my family protected from such people. And Barakallahu fihi, he has a day, every single day of the week, he has a day when he listens to one different type of scholar. So for example, Saturday might be Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, Sunday might be Shaykh bin Baz, Monday might be Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen. I like this. Every single day he says he has a study plan and he's always listening to the people of knowledge. One thing that he said to me is, when you disconnect yourself from knowledge, when you disconnect yourself from the people of knowledge, this is something which becomes standardized and expected. So this is a repulsive and dangerous way to behave. A person who does not understand the basic principles of a subject has no right to speak about its most delicate issues. This is a qaida. And understand this rule and this principle. But that person who does not understand the basic principles of a subject has no right to speak about its most delicate issues. A person who has not studied the foundations has no right to pass judgment on the mountains of knowledge. A person who cannot understand the speech of the scholars in Arabic has no right to spread accusations against them in English. This is not defending the religion. This is misusing the religion. It is from oppression to take a complex issue, strip it of its details, ignore the answers of the scholars, and spread a slogan among common people and beginner students. Such behavior corrupts the hearts, creates suspicion towards the people of knowledge, and turns the deen into a battlefield for immature personalities. Refutation requires knowledge. Refutation requires justice. Refutation requires fear of Allah, taqwa. Refutation requires understanding the difference between a mistake and ambiguous expression, a weak position, an issue of ijtihad, a heresy, a bid'ah, and clear misguidance. Refutation requires knowing when to speak, when to remain silent, when to advise privately, when to clarify publicly, and when to return the matter to senior scholars. Whoever lacks these tools should fear Allah and remain silent. Eighthly, let's take an example. The example of Imam Malik and Muhammad ibn Ishaq. A useful historical example is what occurred between Imam Malik ibn Anas, rahmatullah alayhi, who died in 179 after Hijrah, and Muhammad ibn Ishaq, who died approximately 150 or 151 after Hijrah, the author known for al-Maghazi and Sir. Imam Malik was one of the greatest Imams of Islam. His rank is beyond dispute. Muhammad ibn Ishaq was also a major figure in preserving the Prophet's biography and military expeditions. However, strong speech occurred between them. Abd al-Barr, Spanian, who died in 463, he mentions this in his book Jami'u Bayan al-Ilmi wa Fadli, in the section Babu Hukmi Qawli al-Ulama'i Ba'dihi fi Ba'd, the section concerning the ruling on the statements of scholars about one another. Ibn Abd al-Barr mentioned, وكذلك كان كلام مالك في محمد بن إسحاق بشيء بلغه عنه تكلم به في نسبه وعلمه. Likewise was the speech of Malik concerning Muhammad ibn Ishaq due to something that reached him from him, wherein he had spoken about his lineage and his knowledge. Then Ibn Abdul Barr quoted the report from Abdullah ibn Idris. He said, قدم علينا محمد بن إسحاق فذكرنا له شيئا عن مالك فقال هاتوا علم مالك فأنا بيطاره. Muhammad ibn Ishaq came to us, so we mentioned something to him from Malik. He said, bring the knowledge of Malik, for I am its veteran. Vet. Meaning Ibn Ishaq responded sharply as though saying that he could examine, inspect and expose the defects of Malik's knowledge, just as a vegetarian examines an animal. Then Abdullah ibn Idris, he said, فلما قدمت المدينة ذكرت ذلك لمالك فقال ذاك دجال من الدجاجلة نحن أخرجناه من المدينة. When I came to Medina, I mentioned that to Malik. So he said, that one is a Dajjal from the Dajjals. We expelled him from Medina. This is very severe speech from both sides. Ibn Ishaq spoke sharply about the knowledge of Malik, and Imam Malik responded with an extremely harsh description of Ibn Ishaq. The same severe statement from Malik is also cited by al-Dhahabi in Sir a'lam al-Nubala, where he cited Malik as saying, دجال من الدجاجلة يقول هكذا نحن نفيناه من المدينة. الدجال from the Dajjals, saying such a thing. We exiled him from Medina. You also find Ibn Adi, and he cited the same wording in Al-Kamilu fi ضعفائه الرجال. He said, سمعت مالك بن أنس ذكر عنده محمد بن إسحاق فقال دجال من الدجاجلة. I heard Malik ibn Anas and Muhammad ibn Ishaq was mentioned in his presence. So he said, Dajjal from the Dajjals. This example is important because it shows how the scholars dealt with harsh speech between contemporaries. They did not belittle Imam Malik. They did not erase his rank. They did not say that Malik had no right to criticize. But they also did not take this severe statement as the final judgment on Ibn Ishaq. Rather, they investigated the matter. Ibn Abdul Barr explained that Malik's speech about Ibn Ishaq was connected to something that reached Malik concerning Ibn Ishaq, speaking about his lineage and knowledge. He then gave a balanced judgment concerning Ibn Ishaq and said, وَأَمَّا الصِّدْقُ وَالْحِفْظُ فَكَانَ صَدُوقًا حَافِظًا أثنى عليه ابن شهاب ووثقه شعبة والثوري وابن عيينة وجماعة جلدة العلماء. As for trustworthiness and memory, he was a truthful and a memorizer. Ibn Shihab praised, and Shu'bah, al-Thawri, Ibn Uyayna, and a group of eminent scholars declared him reliable. This is the balance of the people of knowledge. They do not accept every harsh statement between contemporaries blindly. They did not reject all criticism either. They weighed the matter with evidence, context, and the statements of other scholars. This is also why the scholars differed in the exact assessment of Ibn Ishaq. Some accepted him in al-Maghazi and al-Sirah, while exercising more caution with him in hadith, especially in matters of halal and haram. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal said regarding Ibn Ishaq, أما في المغازي وأشباهه فيكتم وأما في الحلال والحرام فيحتاج إلى مثل هذا. As for al-Maghazi and what resembles it, he is written from. But as for halal and haram, then one needs the likes of this. Meaning, in rulings, stronger precision and tighter reliability are required. Yahya ibn Ma'in said, Muhammad ibn Ishaq sadukun walakinnahu laysa bihujjah. Muhammad ibn Ishaq is truthful, but he is not an authority. So the balanced conclusion is this, that Imam Malik's severe statement is not ignored, but it is not treated in isolation. Ibn Ishaq's sharp reply is also not ignored because it helps explain the tension between them. The scholars gathered the statements, examined the reasons, and then reached a fair judgment. They recognized Ibn Ishaq's benefit in al-Maghazi and al-Sirah, in the expeditions, and in al-Sirah. They exercised caution with him in hadith. They did not raise him to the level of the strongest imams. They did not throw him away completely. They did not use Malik's statement alone to destroy him. They did not use the principle of speech of contemporaries to reject all criticism. This example therefore refutes both extremes. It refutes those who accept every harsh statement between contemporaries blindly, because the scholars did not blindly accept Malik's severe wording against Ibn Ishaq as the final word. It also refutes those who reject all criticism between contemporaries, because the scholars still assessed Ibn Ishaq critically. They did not say, since Malik and Ibn Ishaq were contemporaries, no criticism can be considered. Rather, they investigated, compared, balanced, and reached a careful judgment. This is the way of the people of knowledge. Another example, is everybody clear with regards to what has been said so far? Is everybody following? Now, another case that we have is Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani and al-Aini al-Hanafi. So this is another example, is what occurred between Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani and Badruddin al-Aini. Ibn Hajar died in 852 after Hijrah, and Badruddin al-Aini al-Hanafi died in 855 after Hijrah. Ibn Hajar was from the great scholars of Hadith, and his explanation of Sahih al-Bukhārī, titled Fath al-Bari, Sharh Sahih al-Bukhārī, is known to everybody. This sharh is from the most beneficial and accepted works written in explanation of Sahih al-Bukhārī. Badruddin al-Aini was also a scholar who had authored his own commentary, known as ʿabd al-Qari, Sharh of Sahih al-Bukhārī. Between the two, there occurred objections, responses, and sharp exchanges. It is said that, when I say it is said, I say it is said, meaning this requires scrutiny and research, but it is said. I'm only narrating to you. Badruddin al-Aini would send his students to Ibn Hajar's gatherings so that his students could see, because when Ibn Hajar was writing Fath al-Bari, he was teaching it as well. He was teaching Sahih al-Bukhārī at the same time. So Badruddin al-Aini's students would take pieces of information from the gatherings of Ibn Hajar and go back and inform the teacher, and then the teacher Badruddin al-Aini would write it and ascribe it to himself. So Ibn Hajar became extremely angry with regards to this. So he basically wrote a refutation on Nawm in 2 volumes. I've read this refutation. It's called انتقاد الاعتراض في رد على العين في شرح البخاري. dismantling the objection in response to al-Aini's regarding the explanation of al-Bukhārī. This work was written in response to al-Aini's objections. So this example shows that even among people of knowledge, scholarly competition, objections, and sharp exchanges may occur. The student should not use this to degrade the people of knowledge, nor should he use it to enter into all disputes without qualification. Rather, he should learn the principle. The speech of contemporaries against one another is weighed with knowledge, justice, context, and evidence. At the same time, the balanced student of knowledge does not treat all sides as equal in every matter. It is possible to respect a person of knowledge while still believing that another scholar was stronger, more precise, and closer to the truth in a particular dispute. Therefore, one may recognize al-Aini as a person of knowledge and still hold that Ibn was more correct and stronger in his responses. The lesson here is not to flatten all scholarly disagreement, as though every view has the same weight. Nor is the lesson to use scholarly disagreement as an excuse for disrespect. The lesson is that students must learn fairness, giving each person his due rank, following the stronger evidence, and preserving proper manners with the people of knowledge. We do not mention this to belittle anyone. Rather, we mention it to teach the students that even learned people may be tested by rivalry, competition, and sharpness. So what about us? What about young people online whose knowledge is zero to nothing, whose patience is weak, and whose platforms reward harshness? So, 10th, why the praise of Imām al-Bukhārī by his contemporaries is so powerful. Now we return to the main point of the author, of Shaykh Mubārakpūrī. The author wants us to understand why the praise of Imām al-Bukhārī by his contemporaries is so significant. When later scholars praise Imām al-Bukhārī, that is great. But when his own contemporaries praised him, that is even more powerful. Why? Because they lived in his time. They knew the science of hadith. They understood the ranks of narrators. They knew what real memorization meant. They understood what fiqh and precision meant. They were themselves people of knowledge and status. Despite all of that, they still acknowledged his excellence. This shows that Imām al-Bukhārī's rank was not something invented by later generations. His virtues was recognized during his own lifetime by the people most qualified to recognize it. A contemporary praising his peer is not a small matter. It means the virtue was too clear to deny. 11thly, his book itself is enough as the testament. Shaykh al-Salām Mubārakpūrī then makes another important point. He says, even if we do not have the statements of Imām al-Bukhārī's contemporaries, his book itself would be enough to show his rank. The book is al-Jami' al-Sahih, referred to Sahih al-Bukhārī. The book is not merely a collection of narrations. It is a proof of his knowledge, memory, precision, fiqh, insight, and mastery. Its chapter headings show deep fiqh. Its arrangement shows precision. Its selection of narrations show mastery. Its conditions show caution and strength. Its acceptance by the Ummah shows its immense rank. So the praise of the scholars increase us in certainty. Sahih al-Bukhārī itself is the clearest witness to the greatness of Imām al-Bukhārī. 12th, a connection to social media today. This passage is extremely relevant to what we see today. In our time, especially on social media, rivalry often appears in the clothing of religion. A person may say, I am defending Islam. I am defending the Sunnah. I am protecting the Salafi da'wah. I am warning against heretics. I am practicing al-Jawā ta'dīl. I am clarifying the truth. The real question is, what is the objective? Is the objective sincere rectification? Is the objective protection of the Muslims? Is the objective to return people to the truth? Is the objective advice, mercy, and justice? Or is the objective to win, expose, humiliate, dominate, collect followers, and destroy another person? This is where many people become deceived. They may use Islamic language, quote scholars, write PDFs, collect screenshots, and speak with confidence. But none of that proves sincerity, qualification, justice, or wisdom. A long PDF is not proof of knowledge. A harsh tone is not proof of jealousy for the deen. A refutation is not automatically sincere advice. A public warning is not always necessary. Quoting scholars does not make a person qualified to apply their statements. 13th, the difference between sincere refutation and corrupt rivalry. A sincere refutation has signs. It is done by someone qualified or under qualified direction. It is based on verified facts. It is proportionate to the harm. It distinguishes between error, ignorance, ambiguity, weakness, desire, and heresy, bid'ah. It aims to protect the people and rectify the mistaken person if possible. It does not rejoice at another Muslim's fall. It does not turn every disagreement into loyalty and disapproval. It does not use knowledge as a weapon for the ego. Corrupt rivalry also has sides. It searches eagerly for mistakes. It interprets ambiguous words in the worst possible way. It enjoys public takedowns. It spreads screenshots, private conversations without mercy or context. It produces documents but little benefit. It measures victory by humiliation. It turns students into factions. It makes young people suspicious, harsh, and addicted to controversy. This is not the way of sincere knowledge. 14thly, the balanced path for the students of knowledge. Students must be careful because they are often the easiest people to excite. A young student may learn a few terms, hear a few refutations, read a few quotes, and then think he is qualified to speak about people, groups, scholars, students, and organizations. By the field of al-Jabr ta'dīd is not an online hobby. It is not a social media identity. It is not a way to gain followers. It is not a substitute for real study. It is a serious field that requires knowledge, khawf of Allah, justice, ʿAbd, straight, verification, tathabbut, and returning matters to the qualified scholars. The student should ask himself, have I studied enough to speak? Have I understood the issue properly? Have I verified the claim? Have I asked the people of knowledge? Am I seeking rectification? Am I pleased if the person repents and is corrected? Or at him to fate? Necessary because the soul can hide behind religious language. So the balanced path is this. Do not enter every dispute. Do not spread every harsh statement. Do not reject valid criticism. Do not dismiss refutations when they are based on truth and benefit. Do not make refutation your identity. Do not speech of contemporaries as an excuse to defend falsehood. Do not use defending the Sunnah as an excuse for injustice. Rather, weigh matters with knowledge, justice, context, and sincerity, and refer everything back to the people of knowledge. 5thly, the main lessons from the praise of Imām al-Bukhārī. When we read the praise of Imām al-Bukhārī by his contemporaries, we should not pass over it lightly. The praises teaches us two major lessons. First lesson is the immense rank of Imām al-Bukhārī. His excellence was recognized even by the experts of his own age. The second lesson is the virtue of fairness. A sincere person acknowledges the merit of others, even when they are his contemporaries, even when they share his field, even when their excellence may overshadow him. This is from the justice that knowledge demands. The real test is not whether a person can refute his opponent. Many people can refute. Many can collect quotations. Many can make accusations. Many can produce documents. The real test is whether a person can remain just with someone whose existence makes his own ego feel small. Whoever seeks knowledge without justice, humility, and sincerity may turn knowledge itself into a means of corruption. And whoever speaks in the name of the Sunnah while violating the manners of the Sunnah should fear that he is harming the very cause he claims to defend. Therefore, my advice to the beginners of knowledge, students of knowledge who are in their beginning stages, that refutation is something which comes at a very advanced level. You cannot be in the intermediary level and skip to the advanced level. You have to work your way up to the advanced level. Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd raḥimahullāh ta'ala wrote a beautiful book called Al-Wudūd, in which he laid down principles, ethics, conditions, and criteria for somebody to abide by before refuting. And we as Muslims know that the actions of the heart, a'mal al-qulūb, are concealed. Nobody knows them except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the person from the actions of the heart we know is the action of ikhlas, sincerity. Sincerity is a condition for any action to be accepted. And sometimes a person may be sincere, but his emotions overtake him and make him insincere in what he's doing or writing or saying. So the true test is, when we do speak about people and when we do write about people, we should always remember that we will be questioned about what we say and what we write. But it may seem all pleasant now, but the person that has been spoken about or has been written about will meet you and me on the day of judgment. And if he has been oppressed, then the accounts will be settled. So sincerity is an important thing. I met a scholar once, and he said something very beautiful too. And he said to me that in his entire life, he has not written a refutation about anybody except that he has made istikhara to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then written that refutation. And at many times, due to the result of his istikhara, he has not written, but he intended to write. And he said to me that the greatest battle in writing refutations or speaking about people is the action of sincerity. It may be present in the beginning and then it will be lost, and it may come back and then it will be lost and it will come back. It's a continuous battle. So the most important thing in refutation, there's two sides when it comes to refuting. Either it is islah, which is rectification, or either it is isqat, to basically destroy or humiliate. Make sure that you are on the side of Islah, because this is what was the position of the prophets and the messengers, and after them, the companions ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in and the Salaf. Do not be on the side of those who use refutation as a tool to degrade, humiliate, and destroy the lives of people. Because this is not the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is not his hadith. The way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba and the Salaf is that they were people of rectification, not people of disorder and harm and chaos. And if you want to take an example, many centuries later, then that example has to be the example of Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. If you saw his refutations, then his refutations, every single one of them was, you could see the impact and the reflection of Islam in them. And Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, in his time, I don't think he left anybody that needed to be refuted. But you can see when you read his words and how he articulates himself, is that you can see that the sincerity that is in his heart is echoing in his words. So this is the example that we need to follow. It is an example that we need to follow. The famous incident of Kufa, when Abu Musa al-Ash'ari saw certain people practicing, congregating together and reading Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar an X number amount of times. Musa al-Ash'ari knew that this action was unprecedented. He never saw the Prophet instructing anything like this. Here he could have stepped forward as a companion of the Messenger of Allah and refuted these people. What does he do? He doesn't refute, he doesn't speak. He goes to a major scholar among them, to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and informs Abdullah ibn Mas'ud of what he saw. Adopt the methodology and the manhaj of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari had the knowledge. What these people were doing was wrong. But he went to an authority. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud told him that if you see them practicing and doing this again, then call me. I will speak with them. So this is how we should be, that we want to do refutations, and then our refutations, first of all, we need to ask ourselves, are we qualified to write any refutation? This is the first thing. Are you someone who is qualified to write refutations? And the second thing is, before refutations were written in the olden times, when there was connection between the scholars from different lands, we find that scholars would provide refutations and send them to scholars from other lands to endorse. And I remember once that I had written a refutation about somebody 10 years ago. And I visited my Shaykh ʿAbbās. And the issue was related of Ramadan. And I presented the refutation to the Shaykh. And it was the first week or the first 10 days had just passed. And the Shaykh, after we had prayed Tarawih and everything, we were sitting, and I gave the refutation to the Shaykh for his endorsement. The Shaykh looked through the refutation, he read the refutation. I waited patiently. I said to the Shaykh, do I have permission to publish this? He said no. And he put it down. I didn't have the guts or the courage to ask him why. You know, some people, if you tell them, why? Give me your reason. And I returned back to Medina without knowing the reason. 1,000 things came to my mind why the Shaykh might have said no. One of the most common thing that came to my mind is possibly that the refutation must have mistakes. So I went home and I started reading the refutation again to see if I could find those mistakes. Anyway, at Hajj, I traveled back to Mecca and I went to see the Shaykh. And somehow the Shaykh wrote up that refutation. I said to the Shaykh, Naam Shaykh. He said, Zulfiqar, likulli maqamin maqal. Every single place, every single time has, there's always a, how can I translate likulli maqamin maqal? Every single place has its time to say something. That was not the right time. Although everything that you said in there is not to be disputed. I said to the Shaykh, Shaykh, I will not publish this refutation until you tell me that it was the right time. It is the right time. Until this day, this refutation remains here on my desk unpublished. Maybe the Sheikh's too busy to even think about it. That's how a student of knowledge should behave. You should not be out there hastily wanting to get his stuff out. He should only get his stuff published, put out there, when he has mission, an endorsement of the Shaykh. Then I wrote a second refutation on the same individual. This was during COVID. And I phoned the Shaykh. I was in Medina, here in Medina during the COVID. I phoned him and I told him, this is an issue that some brothers from the UK have contacted me. And this is a blanket fatwa that has been given. And I asked him about the fatwa. And because I have a very strong relationship with the Shaykh, like a father, not only just as a teacher, but like a father, he'll always ask me my position first. He'll never give me his position. He'll always ask me. And he said to me, so what do you say about this? I said, Shaykh, from what I have read from the people of knowledge, X, Y, and Z. He said to me, Ahsant, refute this man and publish it. Sometimes we don't get answers from our teachers, why? And that, but we have full faith in them, that they are more wise and more knowledgeable and know the situation much better than us. Hence, being the inheritors of the prophets, we trust them and we go by their judgments. Now, and I'll mention another story, or maybe I've mentioned this story. when I traveled to India to study with Shaykh al-Istadi, rahmatullah alayhi, the Shaykh of Jami Salafiyya, the Grand Mufti of the Salafis of India. Many people don't know this Shaykh, but his status was like the status of Shaykh bin Baz in India. Him and Shaykh bin Baz actually met in Makkah, rahmatullah alayhim. And I just finished my first year in the faculty of Hadith. And I had written another refutation. When you're young and in your prime, you like writing refutations. Alhamdulillah, one thing that I never did in my life is I never published anything without the consent of the people of knowledge, without the people of knowledge revising anything that I wrote. And I still adhere to this methodology. So once we were studying Sahih al-Bukhārī, one day I decided that I was going to take my refutation. Shaykh was bedridden, couldn't walk. So I spoke to his family and spoke to one of his servants, meaning one of his khadims. And he said, keep the refutation or keep your piece of work with you. And you want to give it to the Shaykh when he's in a mood like this. So I was looking for those indicators. And then I saw the indicator and I gave him. I said, Shaykh, I have written something which I want you to have a look at. And the Shaykh said to me, what is this? I said, Shaykh, it's a refutation. I said, okay. He said, refutation. He said, oh, I will have a look at it. So I left. And the next day, before we started to have our lesson, I asked his khadim, so what did the Shaykh say? Did he say anything to you? Any feedback? He said the Shaykh will speak to you himself. So I said to the Shaykh that did you have a look at this refutation? Shaykh said, yes, I had a look at it. And in the refutation, I had cited the Shaykh himself from his numerous books. So, that made me feel confident that the Shaykh is definitely going to endorse this for me. I said, Shaykh, so can I publish it? He said, no, don't publish this. And I asked the Shaykh, I said, they asked him, why should I not publish it? I said, so Shaykh, when can I publish this? He said, you'll know yourself when the time is right. I said, okay. Took the refutation with me. When I graduated from the faculty of Hadith, in my library, I came across that refutation. So standing in my library, I started to read my refutation. And I looked at it and I said, wow. Got a pencil and started crossing things out. This is not this. This is not how it should be said. This is not how it should be said. By the time I finished it, I realized that almost 80% of everything that I had written was crossed out. Shaykh had passed away. And I realized the wisdom that the people of knowledge have. Had I published it, at that time it would have been a catastrophe, a calamity. And I remembered his words. And then I remembered he said something too on the very last few days when we were together. He said to me, do not put yourself forward to write or to author or to refute anything until you have completed your studies at Medina. That was a big statement. I understood because I had graduated and I realized what he said. This is our people of knowledge. Without them, we are completely lost. This is a man, this is the same man that when he wrote a book for almost 400 pages. And one of the people of Bid'ah basically responded back to one issue. And he wrote another 350 pages refuting him just on that issue. His books from back to back are nothing but knowledge. All his books that you see that he writes, 400, 500, 600 pages. And at the end of the book, he will say, well, I have wrote this very briefly. So you're thinking, if he had written it in detail, how many pages would it have been? And ask anybody who has read the books of this man. From beginning till end, you will find nothing but knowledge in his books. When 27 refutations were written on the Salafi Dawah, about 27, this man in 3 months wrote thousands of pages refuting all 27 books by himself, bedridden. Show me a man that can do that with very limited sources. They say that the ulama of where he taught would bring their works for him to proofread. Because if he gave the approval, the stamp of approval, they would be content. Oh, Shaykh Ra'is Nadwi has approved this. No fatwa from Darul Ifta in Jami Salafiyya would be officially issued until Ra'is Nadwi put his stamp on it. It's not until this day. They said that if you look at the library of Jami Salafiyya, they said that he had almost read everything in there in his prime. Somebody who would read 17 to 18 hours a day. And the rest would all be divided with sleep, family, eating, everything. Every single day. So, contemporaries is a big issue. And we are all subject to our contemporaries. And I always say to my students that we're reading the tarjuma of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and the tarjuma of Imām al-Bukhārī simultaneously, and I think this is one of the greatest blessings Allah has done to me in my life. One week we're reading this about Imām al-Bukhārī, the next week we're reading this, or in the same week we're reading this about Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. What made Imām al-Bukhārī and Imām Ibn Taymiyyah stand out from their contemporaries? It was their sincerity, and both were oppressed and slandered, lied upon, trialed, exiled. They were sincere. So we ask Allah to make us like them. When we write like them. When we speak like them. When we refute like them. And they were personalities that didn't want to be in the front line. They were compelled to be in the front line. They didn't choose to be there. They were put in a position where they did not choose or have the desire or the wish to be in that position. These are our examples. Things which have become so normalized in the West on social media. In the eyes of the people of knowledge, these are great issues. Lives have been destroyed. Households have been destructed. Marriages have been destroyed. All in the name of al-jarh wa ta'dil. And these people who have been the cause of all this mess that we see in the West, the harshness, ignorance in the name of knowledge, refutation in the name of protecting the deen. And these people need to know that they will meet their Rabb with the people that they have oppressed, slandered, wronged. And this is the sad case of it. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if you want to be like the Ahlul Hadith, the people of Hadith, then He makes us like them in their refutations, in their manners, and in their approach towards their enemies. Ahlul Hadith are our enemies as well. There's a lot to learn, and there's a lot that you cannot learn just in books. There's a lot to be learned with sohbah, with companionship, with the people of knowledge. For I have learned so much spending time with the people of knowledge. The wisdom, the hikmah that you learn cannot be learned from books. It is learned by accompanying the people of knowledge and sitting in their gathering and not speaking a word, and just seeing that the way they respond and they speak, that in itself will teach you volumes. And in this time and in this day and age, what the people of the West require the most is the sohbah of the people of knowledge. And the people of knowledge, because of the fitan that we have brought to this da'wah, to this blessed da'wah, have closed their doors on us. They are very particular, very precautious of who they allow in their hashia or in their companionship, because why? Those who have been allowed, many of them have brewed fitan by being around the scholars. And the contention that we see between some of the scholars, what we have read today about the contemporaries, a major role played in this type of munafarah, type of squad that we see, has been the work and the play of those who have been around, some of the people of knowledge who have fed them stuff with the intention of other people to be taken down, who they see as a threat to their status. As one scholar said to his students, بيننا وبينكم الكرسي. Between us and you is the kursi, meaning we meet at the kursi and we disperse at the kursi. Nothing else. I will only meet my students at the kursi, nothing more, nobody. Why? Because of the fitna. So if Allah blesses you to be given the chance to be in the company of the people of knowledge, then use that opportunity. Cherish that opportunity. Every time I go to see the scholars who I have access to, I think every single question that I'm going to ask will maximize my benefits. So I'm actually fighting with myself, or what should I ask this Shaykh? Because I know I may have only 4 or 5 questions that may be answered. I think this one is first, this one is second. Which one? Because these chances come there are very few chances that come to you if Allah blesses you. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us sincerity, and that He makes us like these. He makes us like Imām al-Bukhārī rahmatullah alayh. The most important thing for a soul of knowledge is sincerity, ikhlas, in any action, especially for a soul of knowledge. We ask Allah to bless us with this ikhlas. And we ask Allah that if we do speak about somebody, we speak with knowledge, with truthfulness, with precision, and that we do not oppress anybody with our words, our actions. وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. Now, Barakallahu feekum. I think we stop here, inshallah, and we'll continue on Sunday. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the sincere ones, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the fitan, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to the truth, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us beneficial knowledge. Now, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.